What did you shoot on?
We shot on an ARRI Alexa, and it's a great camera. Love it. Love it.
And were the lenses part of the package? Did you get other lenses from somewhere else?
We have a great relationship with Kerner Camera in Seattle, and I've worked with them on commercials before I moved to Los Angeles, so we had a great rapport. So as a producer, when I was going to be shooting up there, I knew we were going to rent from them, and so we sat down with them and we told them what our budget was, which was more than they thought it was going to be, because they're used to supporting independent film. They're used to people coming in and first of all, they're used to people coming in and asking for free, which is ridiculous. And then they're used to people negotiating rates or asking for a certain weekly rate, which is on the verge of insulting. So when we came in, we were super serious. And we said, this is our budget, and this is what we're going to do, and this is how long we're going to do it for. So they were on board right away. And then I did my test, and I tested Kawas. I knew I was going to shoot anamorphic because the film demands anamorphic. And so I tested Kawas, which are older lenses. They're very mixed bag as far as the quality goes of one set to another. So, for example, you might have a set of Kawa anamorphics where the 75 in the set is your hero, and the optics of a couple of the other, like the 40 or the 100, or for example, they won't perform as well, whether it's for the first AC or whether it's for aberrations, or whether the flare is not working for you if that's what you're into. And I tested those primarily because I was fascinated by how violent some of the moments are in the film, and if I wanted to incorporate optics that would lift that up and sort of supercharge it. So however, that was kind of an outlier because I knew that I was going to shoot Cooke anamorphics as my primary set since I started writing this movie. So, yeah.
And then how are you lighting it?
Well, we have a great relationship with Pacific Grip and Lighting in Seattle. They have a grip and electric house in Portland. They have a grip and electric house in Seattle. And so Pacific Grip and Lighting, or we call them PGL, it's run by a guy named Ray Hammond, and he is someone I've known for my entire career. So that first boxing movie that I shot on 16 with those actors that all worked for Sandwiches, the Kino that we used, I think we could only afford to rent 3 lights, and we rented them from him. And so he and I have known each other my whole career. And when I came back and said, I'm ready to do a film and I'm going to produce as well, and this is what everything looks like, he gave us a deal that's in the realm of generosity that's very hard to express, because he believes in me and he believes in what we're doing, and we're very gracious, and we appreciate everything that he does. I think kind of like Kerner, maybe kind of like other vendors have experienced, sometimes filmmakers aren't full of gratitude. Sometimes they're artists to the point of ingratitude, or they just forget to acknowledge people. We're not like that. And so Ray was extraordinary in giving our production the tools that I had gotten used to using in commercial work. So you get used to using certain kinds of lights. You get used to using 18Ks, and you get used to using sky panels, etc., where you're using some of the best instruments that are made. And so we had an incredible grip and electric package the whole movie. And he didn't know my cinematographer, but I, talked about him, and Ray knows how particular and specific I am. So he recommended a gaffer for us that was local, out of Seattle, who's done tons of movies and is a very awesome guy who takes no shit from anyone. And so he said, I think you two are going to get along, but if you don't, then don't work with them, because it won't work. And he and I met for a coffee, and in 5 minutes, he was like, oh, you're not fucking around. And I was like, no. And His name is Kevin Cook. He was our gaffer, and Kevin brought on a key grip named Mark Buing, and those two created an opportunity. Those two created an opportunity for Duncan and I to hold the bar as high as possible, right? So Duncan Cole is my cinematographer. He and I are brothers. He and I we work in the spirit of Spielberg and Kaminsky. We work in the spirit of Nolan and Wally Pfister when that was his DP, or Deakins and the Coen brothers. He is the cinematographer that I've been looking for my career. I've worked with a number of cinematographers, and he and I just get each other. And the reason why we get each other is we're both photographers first. We're both looking at pictures, both creating pictures. The second reason is we don't reference other films when we're doing our process creatively. Like when I bring my visual reference materials to him and I say, this is what I want this sequence to look like, and the color palette's going to shift over this arc and all that, they're photographs or they're paintings. They're not stills from movies. Very rarely, I will say that. I won't say never, I'll say rarely, because we're not trying to emulate another movie. We're trying to tell this story. So he and I understand lighting together very, very specifically. And he knows that I'm a compositional and a aesthetically driven director visually. So we don't ever talk about composition, ever. Because I'm like, this is what it's gonna look like. And he goes, right on, man. and it's the same thing. I've been on sets before where directors don't call the lens. They don't even know the focal length. They just say, I want it to do this and that. And then the DP calls a 40 or a 50 mil or whatever. And that's the opposite. I call everything. And there were a handful of times, maybe two or three, where he said, hey, can we look at it on this? And I'm like, yeah, sure, man, we can look at it on that, but we're not gonna shoot it on that. And he's like, all right, cool. And it became a joke because sometimes he'd want to look at it on a 50 and I'm like, we're shooting on a 40. And he's like, yeah, let's just look at it though. And I'm like, all right, cool. And we'd look at it and he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, well, we just wasted 5 minutes because we're gonna shoot it on this. And it's not like a dictatorial thing. It's not like a tyranny. It's like, I know exactly what I want every shot to look like and why. And so in our relationship, we're beyond that. We're beyond that. He is an incredible lighting cinematographer. So when we look at how we want the lighting language of the film to be, he communicates that directly with Kevin and Mark, the gaffer and the key, in accomplishing that. And so from my work with Duncan in the past, before we did features together, we had that rapport where I'm like, it looks like this and here's why, and we come around here and it's dark and super silhouetted there and you know why, and he's like, oh, okay. And it's like that. And then he goes and we have this very, very, very meticulous process, right? And then he goes this way and works with the gaffer and the key, and I go this way and work with the actors, and we're both super efficient. And he knows that he called me once, he said, you are the guardian of the image. And he didn't mean you're a control freak. He meant, you know exactly what you want, so I don't worry about that, right? He wants it to look like the way we want it to look, so he's worried about how it's going to be lit to work that way. And from a technical perspective, he and I have a very, very dynamic vocabulary together about all the tools, not just optics or camera tools, but lighting instruments and things like that, and lighting quality and color. We talk a lot about color, and that's because my goal as a director is I'm going to bake the look into the negative. I'm not going to shoot it flat and then go into the DI with a color grade and make the color grade make the framework, right? So there's a latitude. We've both talked about how if we were working on a studio movie, more than likely we would have to shoot our films flatter, right? Because the studio would want to be able to have more control in the color grade, in the DI. And we don't abide by that at all. And a good example of that is that for some sequences, we use split diopters. So diopters, especially on anamorphic frames, diopters can be they can be spherical, they can be diagonal, they can be pieces of glass. What the diopter does, it changes the magnification of the image so that it appears blurry. Now you can accomplish that in the DI. You can make a power window, you can add a blur or a Gaussian blur, you can make it look milky, right? Like a flashback or like something romantic. You can do that in post. We didn't. We put it on the matte box and shot it that way. That's a commitment to the image. You go, that's what we're doing. We're gonna bake it in. And if we didn't know each other as well as we do, with that mutual trust, we would make more limited decisions. We would make less committed decisions. But everybody on that team, on this first feature, Kevin, Mark, their teams on the grip and on the gaff side, and the camera side, we all became a family. They're all coming back for the next film. And it was interesting for some of them who had done, I won't say who it was, but it was interesting for some of them who had worked on a lot of independent films. And working with us was different. And we were very fortunate to have their talent because they had probably worked on some projects they weren't really stoked about. You know, they had worked on some projects that were just jobs. And then they came on board ECCO, and we built this creative team that was like everybody, in like 2 days, everybody was like, we all care about how this is gonna be lit. We care about how fast a lens gets on that camera so I can frame up that shot. We care about the sensitivity to a dolly move, you know, the vocabulary of movement in a dolly on a track or whatever. And it was, I'm super grateful for their commitment. They all invested, and I think it was a testament to their professionalism. You know, they saw this ripe opportunity to be like, hey man, I'm gonna give a shit. And they all blew us away with how much they cared about the film. And so that was, you know, that was awesome.